Chapter 8. The Texts That Do Not Argue. Consider what happens when you remove all the scaffolding at once, not gradually, not layer by layer, giving the structure time to adjust, all of it simultaneously without warning. If the arch is complete, it stands. The stones have been locked into mutual support by the keystone, and the arch carries itself. The scaffolding was never what was holding it up, it was only what was required while the arch learned to hold itself. Remove it, and the arch is revealed for what it always was, self-supporting. If the arch is not complete, if one stone is missing, if the alignment is slightly off, if the keystone has not been properly seated, the removal of the scaffolding is catastrophic. The structure collapses in the absence of the support that was compensating for its incompleteness. The radical texts remove all the scaffolding, simultaneously, without warning. They are not for students who have not completed Phase 1 and Phase 2. Read without preparation. The Ashtavakra Gita is either incomprehensible or dangerous. It appears to say that nothing matters, that action and inaction are equivalent, that the person who has realized the self is beyond all ethical obligation. This reading is catastrophically wrong, but it is the reading available to a mind that does not have the Phase 2 architecture in place. The text does not protect you from this misreading. It assumes you are not the student who will make it. Read with preparation. The Ashtavakra Gita is the most direct voice in the entire corpus. And direct here means something precise. Every text in Phase 1 and Phase 2 speaks from a position adjacent to the recognition. The teacher knows. The student is being brought toward knowing. The argument moves from the student's current position toward the destination, using the student's current vocabulary as the vehicle. This is the only possible pedagogical approach when the student has not yet arrived. The radical texts speak from inside the recognition, not toward it, from it. They do not describe what the recognition will be like when you arrive. They speak as though the recognition is already present, as though the only thing between you and it is your failure to notice that it is already present. The entire argumentative structure collapses. There is nothing to argue toward. There is only the present fact, stated with whatever force is available, that what you are looking for is what is looking. This shift in voice is not a rhetorical choice. It is a technical decision made on the basis of what the Vasana removal operation requires. Argument works on beliefs. If you hold a false belief, a sufficiently rigorous argument can dislodge it. But the residual identification, the Vasana, is not a belief. It is an orientation, a direction of habitual movement. And orientations are not dislodged, interrupted by shocked argument. They are reoriented by an encounter with something that operates at the level of the orientation rather than the level of the belief. The radical texts operate at the level of the orientation. The Ashtavakra Gita is a dialogue between a king and a sage. The king is Janaka, not an ordinary student. He is a philosopher king, a householder who has engaged seriously with Vedantic inquiry, a man whose understanding is genuine and whose intellectual preparation is complete. He is the student who has arrived at the Vasana impasse described at the end of the previous chapter. He knows the argument. He cannot find the recognition. The sage is Ashtavakra, a name meaning eightfold crooked. The tradition records that he was born with 8 physical deformities, a detail that becomes significant in the text's opening, where the king's court laughs at the sage's appearance. Ashtavakra's response is not anger, it is a question. He asks Janaka, "You are a court of leather merchants. You have assessed the container and missed what it contains. Do you want the teaching or not?" The exchange that follows is not an argument. It is a series of declarations delivered with the force of established facts. You are not the body, you know this. Stop behaving as though you do not know it. You are the witness of the 3 states, you know this. The witness does not enter the states. The states arise in the witness and dissolve. Stop looking for the recognition inside the states. You are not the one who acts, you know this. Action arises in the body-mind. The awareness in which the body-mind appears does not act. Stop taking credit and blame for what the body-mind does. You are free, right now. Not when the vasanas are fully resolved. Not when the feeling of separateness finally dissolves. Right now, as you read this sentence, the awareness that is reading is free, unconditioned, unlocated, not in bondage to anything. The bondage is the story of the bondage, and the story arises in the awareness that is already free. Notice that, not later. Now, what is the Ashtavakra Gita doing? Technically, it is performing the Apavada at the highest possible compression. Phase 2 performed the Adhiropa, installed the witness position. established the Jiva Brahman identity, built the philosophical case with maximum force. The Ashtavakra Gita withdraws everything Phase 2 installed, not because Phase 2 was wrong, because even the concept of the witness position is a position. Even the concept of Jiva Brahman identity is a concept. Even I am Brahman, the Mahavakya, the corpus's central assertion, is a thought arising in awareness. And the awareness in which it arises is prior to the thought, prior to the Mahavakya, prior to the identity operation, prior to the witness, prior to the recognition itself as a cognitive event. This is what the Ashtavakra Gita is pointing at, not the recognition as an achievement, the awareness that is present before, during, and after the recognition, the awareness that does not change when the recognition occurs. The awareness that is, and this is the text's most radical move, equally present in the state of misidentification and the state of recognition. It was never absent. The misidentification was occurring in it. The recognition occurs in it. The difference between the two states is a difference in the content of awareness, not a difference in the awareness itself. You were always already free. The recognition is the noticing of what was always already the case. The Ribhu Gita extends this to a length that would seem excessive if the length were not itself the technique. The text is 44 chapters. It says the same thing in slightly different words, with slightly different emphasis, from slightly different angles for the entirety of those 44 chapters. The sage Ribhu speaks to his student Nidagha, and what he says does not develop. It does not build. It does not advance from premise to conclusion. It circles the same recognition repeatedly with variations in expression but not in content. The student trained in Phase 2 analytical thinking will find this maddening at first. Where is the argument? Where is the new move? Why are we saying the same thing again? The maddening quality is the technique. The vasana, the residual identification, survives argument by going underground during the argument and re-emerging afterward. The student follows the argument, agrees with the conclusion, and then returns to ordinary life where the ordinary identification resumes. The argument was a local event. The vasana is a continuous background process. The Ribhu Gita's repetition is designed to overwhelm this return. If the text said the same thing once and moved on, the vasana could wait it out. The text says the same thing 44 chapters in a row. It is harder to wait out. Each repetition catches the vasana from a slightly different angle, closing a slightly different exit. After 44 chapters, there is nowhere left for the residual identification to reassert itself that the text has not already covered. The Ribhu Gita is not a book to be read in one sitting. It is a book to be lived inside for months, returned to daily, each session a fresh exposure to the same light from the same direction, until the thing that was casting a shadow in that direction has finally dissolved. The Avadhuta Gita is different from both. Where the Ashtavakra Gita is clean and precise, and the Ribhu Gita is relentless and exhaustive, the Avadhuta Gita is ecstatic. Its speaker, the Avadhuta, the one who has shaken off all social convention and psychological conditioning, is not teaching, he is singing. The text is not a dialogue. It is a monologue delivered from the position of recognition with a joy that the other radical texts, for all their force, do not quite reach. The Avadhuta is telling you what it is like from the inside. No inside and outside. That is the first thing. The distinction between the one who recognizes and what is recognized has dissolved. There is no longer a witness watching. There is only the witnessing, which is the same as the witnessed, which is the same as Brahman, which is the same as what you are, which is the same as everything that appears to exist, which is the same as the joy of that appearance. I am everywhere. I am the self of all. I am pure consciousness. I am without beginning and without end. I am beyond all qualities and distinctions. This is not megalomania. It is a phenomenological report. The Avadhuta is describing what is present when the identification with the individual body-mind has fully dissolved. Not the disappearance of the body-mind, it continues to function. The dissolution of the identification. What remains when the story, I am this particular person in this particular situation with these particular concerns, has stopped running as the background operating system is not nothing. Not a blank. Not a void, this, exactly this. The appearing of everything in awareness as awareness without a separate witness to observe it from a distance. The Avadhuta Gita gives you the report from the other side of the impasse, not to bypass the work, not to provide a shortcut around the Phase 1 and Phase 2 texts. But because the student in the Vasana impasse needs to know that the other side exists, that the work is not endless, that the recognition is not a philosopher's fantasy, but a state of affairs that human beings inhabit and can describe from the inside with this degree of specificity and this degree of joy. The meta-analysis of the corpus names the radical texts as the Upanishads phase at the largest scale. Not the Upanishads of individual positions, the withdrawal of the witness position, the withdrawal of the Jiva Brahman identity concept, but the Upanishads of the entire Phase 1 and Phase 2 architecture simultaneously. Everything that was installed to bring you here is now being removed, not because it was false, because it was scaffolding, and scaffolding that has done its work is ready to come down. The meta-analysis also notes something important about the sequence. The radical texts cannot be the first thing you read. They also cannot be withheld indefinitely. A curriculum that never reaches the point of removing its own scaffolding is a curriculum that has mistaken the scaffolding for the arch. Shankara's genius was to build a corpus that is systematically self-dismantling, that contains, within its structure, the tools required for the removal of the structure. This is the invariant, not a doctrine, not a set of propositions. A structural feature of the corpus that persists across every text, every period, every commentarial layer. The corpus is designed to dissolve itself in the mind of the student who uses it correctly. Install, deploy, remove, leave no trace. What remains is not the product of the corpus. It was there before the corpus began. The corpus was the process of clearing the obscuration that was preventing you from noticing it. Part 5 moves to the Upanishads. The corpus's highest compression delivery systems, the source from which everything else was drawn. We are approaching the deepest water. Part 5, the source.